Hi everyone, welcome back to another Moxxie coaching video designed to teach you how to read the tarot for yourself and for others. My name is Michelle and I am on a mission to demystify the tarot and bring it into the realm of the everyday for the purposes of self-coaching and personal development. So if that's something that you find interesting, grab yourself your favorite beverage and join me for this next video. Thanks. Bye-bye. In this video, we're going to be talking about the High Priestess. The High Priestess is the female version or the female counterpart to the Magician, who we discussed in the last video. And where the Magician is all about creating magic and creating, manifesting, leading, all of those things in the material realm, the High Priestess is all about similar things in the ethereal realm. Traditionally, this card is a suggestion that perhaps you need to be trusting your gut instincts, looking at what your gut, what your intuition, what your instincts say over what your logical mind is telling you in this particular situation. It's also often suggesting that you know what's best. You may not even think you know what's best. But as you start to explore and as you start to look into what the situation is and explore the vibration and the energy behind the High Priestess, you may find that your body, your instinctual beingness is actually giving you some feedback and providing some suggestions about how to deal with the situation if you really sort of tap into her energy. You might even consider trying to meditate on your question with this card. The High Priestess is also about reminding us to be open to our intuition, to try to tap into or try to feel the energy that is coming to you that might be coming through non-traditional channels, which I suppose is a roundabout way of saying, look at where you seem to get downloads. And that's, a topic for a whole other video. But, do you sense something coming through? Do you hear something or feel something? Do you just know something, right? All of these things are things that when this card comes up for you in a reading, it is asking you to open yourself up to all of these ideas. And again, as with all things esoteric, take what resonates with you, leave the rest behind. That's one of the most wonderful things about the tarot, in my opinion, is that as we grow more comfortable with it, as we use it more, as we begin to develop a relationship with it, we're able to, in a lot of ways, I'm not saying completely disregard the traditional meanings of the cards, not at all, but you get to the point where you're using the traditional meanings of the cards more as an anchor or a foundation in terms of the card meaning, and then you're able, if you have that anchor, to sort of go off on your own and explore what else, excuse me, it may mean to you personally. You may also, as your intuition develops, begin to get intuitive downloads when you're doing a reading that don't necessarily make sense in the moment, especially if you're reading for someone else. But you'll find later that, those intuitive downloads are actually working. So what does all this mean? In terms of the High Priestess herself, what is the symbolism? How does it fit in? So the traditional symbolism related to the traditional meaning, we have a lot of different things that clue us in or cue us in to who she is and sort of her purpose. You'll see that she has the crown on her head that reflects different phases of the moon. And the moon is all about intuition, psychic ability. That is a misspelling, diving feminine, divine feminine. This pure essence of intuitive femaleness is kind of a good way to describe this card. The color blue is a very traditional color for this concept of tranquility and peace. And when I see the High Priestess, and I hope this isn't blasphemous, and I apologize if it is, but the High Priestess reminds me of the Mother Mary in some ways because of the serenity, because of the very femininity of her essence. And of course, you know, the blue, and she's shrouded in blue, and she's dressed in, you know, similar clothing. So to me, there is some similarity there. Now, pillars represent balance very often in the tarot. And if you notice, there are pomegranates in the back behind her. Those ask us to remember the femininity, the fertility. If you've ever opened a pomegranate, it is full of seeds, and they vary. I mean, goodness, since religious art began, they have represented femininity and you know, fertility and that type of thing. So this card in general asks you to look at your personal relationship with your intuition, with your ability to be intuitive, with your willingness to open your intuition up, and asks you to connect with that deep knowing that we all have, that deep, and I'm going to call it a feminine knowing because sexuality is a spectrum, that we all have. You know, I don't care if you're male, female, whatever, however you identify, we have some, whether we recognize it or not, some feminine intuitive energy in all of us. So when this card comes up in a reading, what are the logical keywords? If you remember nothing about the symbolism, if you remember nothing about the traditional meaning of the card, even having a couple keywords is a great place to start. So the keywords clearly are pulled or developed from the basic core concept of the traditional meaning of the card. So keywords being things like intuition, psychic development, mystery, mysterious things, the unknown, spirituality, power in these particular realms. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, that feminine power that we all have, regardless of where we are on the spectrum. In terms of archetypes, I think it's tough because a lot of times women, this type of female has associated with it a negative connotation, you know, that whole witch thing, that whole sorceress type of energy. And, we all bring our own preconceived notions to that and to the tarot. My assumption is clearly that you don't have that if you are here and you're interested in learning, but it's something that I guess I want you to be able to distinguish. I'm not talking about that, right? I'm not talking about any sort of dark energy here. I'm talking just simply about someone who can connect with the energetic realms that we're just flat out not able to connect with. So in terms of the archetypes, who are or what are the archetypes that fit well with this particular card? The supernatural mother, right? The oracle, the image here, Melisandre, I have a hard time pronouncing her name. This is a character from Game of Thrones. And in Game of Thrones, I think she was also known as the Red Queen or the Red Witch, something along those lines. And she was, I believe, like the king's oracle. She was the one who was able to see things that other people were not able to see. And in this story, and in lots of fantasy stories, women like this are actually listened to. Women like this are valued for the skills that they have instead of being feared for, I don't know, cultural persecution, I guess is a good way to put it. Okay, so, and then again, another much more benign archetype would be the fairy godmother. Just she can grant wishes, she can do things. She has a power and a presence that, quote unquote, regular people either don't have or don't cultivate in themselves to the point that they realize they have it. And lastly, we have the questions that you may want to ask yourself when this card comes up in a reading for you. And these are particularly valuable if you are reading for yourself. So, question being, what does your intuition tell you about this particular situation? And of course, the symbolism in the card backs up the card's meaning. But as I talked about earlier, the more you can learn the intricacies of the non-obvious things in the tarot, like the symbolism, like the history, all of those things, the richer your readings are going to be. So what does that mean in terms of this particular card? This card may be just simply asking you to consider whether or not it would be a good idea to listen to your intuition in this particular situation. Now, how about another one? Are you confident that you are seeing everything that you need to see? Are you seeing all of the factors related to the situation? Or is there potential that there's something that's hidden from view? Whether it's something hidden from view because you don't want to see it, or is it hidden from view because it just is? And keeping in mind that the moon is very often about hidden things, about mysteries, about things in our subconscious that are not in the forefront of our minds. Remember that the cards can sometimes suggest to us that they are actually representing someone in our lives. So if you are doing a reading, this card comes up and it doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense in terms of it being you or relating specifically to you, you may want to ask yourself if this is if it's coming up for you because there's someone in your life who embodies this particular energy, and who is willing to support you in the way that she can support people, right? Another question is, do you need to be more open to your intuition in this situation? Are you keeping yourself closed off and using only your logical mind, only what you remember from the tarot? Or are you giving yourself permission to see where your intuition takes you, to see what might come up for you if you look beyond the logical and the brain-based things? And sometimes, despite our best efforts, despite, pulling up the encyclopedia of meanings in our mind, in spite of our intuition, in spite of everything else, sometimes we still are just flummoxed and trying to figure out why a particular card came up for us in a reading. And if you run into this situation, or I probably should say when you run into this situation, sometimes rather than either pushing through and trying to assign a meaning to a card that just doesn't really feel right to you, consider asking yourself questions like, do I need to embody the energy of this card? Is that why it's coming up for me? Because I need to step into the power of this card a little bit more. Something as simple as that. Likewise, is it saying, whoa, you need to avoid embodying the energy of this card? And depending on what the situation is, what the story is in your reading, that's definitely something that is a possibility. And it's definitely even more of a possibility when you get into the minor arcana cards. And then lastly, you might want to ask yourself, do I know of anybody who embodies the energy of this card? And if I do, how can I take what I know about them, what I know about my relationship with them, about how I interact with them, or about how they speak, that that can help me intuit how to read this card. Okay, so it's, the tarot is, as much as I would love to make it into a science, and as much as it really is a science in a lot of ways, it's still very flexible. It's still very open to interpretation. And yeah, this is just something that you'll get used to as we move along in our tarot journey. All right, last but not least, next video, we're going to be talking about the Emperor and the big, big, big energy of the Emperor. So I hope to see you then. And in the meantime, you have a fantastic week. Take care.